Okay. I haven't seen this Banlist prediction.
I got the prediction. It's going to be the Banlist prediction for the new format. This is really exciting. We're about a month out, and we have GGYGO coming right around the corner. There's a lot of things that really need to be addressed in the game, and I've definitely heard this a few times, and there's so many cool new cards coming out, especially.
So, GGYGO, this is the first Banlist prediction I've seen so far. At the very least, I want to see Kashtira Arise Heart banned. That card by itself is locking out so many other decks, whether it's Drytron, whether it's Dark World, whether it's just any graveyard decks right now. Just can't really be a good part of the meta unless they have a very good way to deal with Kashtira Arise Heart. And even without Arise Heart, I feel like Kashtira will still have some sort of impact on the game. Like, even if they completely banned Arise Heart, I still think Kashtira may not be a top deck, but it would certainly be an engine in a bunch of other decks. And not only that, I feel like Eradicator, Epidemic Virus needs to be banned. I feel like D-Barrier should be hit. I feel like they both need to be banned, to be honest. I feel like D-Shifter should be banned. I don't know. We'll see. I want to see what he thinks as well.
But none of them are really that good if we see cards like D-Shifter still in the format. So this is where I'm kind of taking everything that I've seen around the format, everything that I've seen around the community being talked about, and put it into one big Banlist prediction of all the cards that everyone expects to see go. And this is going to be quite a few, because I feel like this next one is going to be rather large. I think that there's quite a bit that needs to be addressed, and I'd be very interested to see what's going to happen. And if minimal things get addressed, I think that we're in for a pretty bad format. So I do think that we will see quite a bit, because before the new cards can come out into the game and be really effective, we do need to see quite a bit change, especially if you're trying to push like the Illusionist archetype. That's another archetype that just can't perform under cards like D-Shifter. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the cards that I could see getting banned in the next ban list. So the first one here is going to be Arise Heart. I do think that we're going to start seeing the huge hits come out to Kashtira. I think this is one of the cards we'll probably end up seeing go. There's going to be a couple cash hits on here. One that I want to see hit, but I didn't leave it on here because I don't think it will get hit. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk about some of the cards that I think will get hit. That's going to be Arise Heart. This card is naturally just a problem in the game. It's a Macrocosmos on the board.
So he thinks Arise Heart's going to be banned as well. Me and this GGYGO kind of been thinking a lot along the same lines, I think. I've just seen like these cards tearing up locals and regionals, and it's just not fun to watch. It's not fun to play into.
Definitely let me know down below what you think could get hit in this ban list, because there's definitely going to be quite a few that I believe will end up getting hit. The second card here is going to be Puppet. So Puppet was just a card that everyone was really hoping got hit, and then we saw Expulsion get hit, and then...
I disagree. Puppet is not the problem. If it's not Puppet, then they're summoning Ido, or they're summoning the Raw card. I forget what it's called, like Raw's Disciple. They can summon, or there's like 5 different cards they can summon to your field and lock you out of the game. So why would you just ban one of those? Like, you need to hit the new, I think it's like Albion Sanctifier branded card that does what Expulsion did, which is now banned. It does what Expulsion did, but from the extra deck. So you should just hit that card.
Puppet's still been doing Puppet things, and it's really unfortunate when there's a card that just shuts everything off and you can't really do much to it. So I think this is definitely a huge issue in the game, so it definitely has to go. I think that if you're going to be hitting a lot of decks, you kind of have to hit everything to really make sure that the power level of the format goes down so all new decks can come out. I didn't really put any Sprite things on here. I don't really think that Sprite is necessarily a problem. I think that it's like a fine engine. I know a lot of people were talking about like blue to 1, but I don't even think that's necessary. But moving forward here, D-Shifter, I really want to see this card gone. And then I know that I'm going to get a lot of comments from people that are like, oh my god, you're a tier player, so of course you want to see this card get banned.
Look, D-Shifter in general, it's the same sort of issue with Arise Heart, but even then, it's almost more toxic than Arise Heart, because you can Book of Moon the Arise Heart. You can Kaiju the Arise Heart. You can, do literally anything to get it off the field and maybe potentially play. D-Shifter, in your draw phase, in your standby phase, they toss that thing down and you just lose. Can you even play? Like, if you don't have a negate for it, it's a lingering floodgate that banishes everything. So if you cannot deal with it at the time of its activation, you just probably lose.
But Like, this is a card that doesn't just shut off tier. It shuts off any deck that you want to play that is not called cash. And I think that's a huge problem in the game. Especially like I was talking about, like the Illusionist archetype, everything has to go to grave. You have decks like Rika where things really want to go to grave. There's so many decks that this card just puts up a gigantic issue, and it's something that it has to go. I really want to see this card get banned, and I think the format will be a lot better. If nothing happens this ban list except Shifter getting banned, I think that a lot of people will have a very good time next format, but we'll have to see. The next one here is going to be E-Red.
Thank God.
Sure
I hope.
Can agree this card has to go.
Yeah.
There's a number of times that we see this card get flipped, and it's just the entire game is right there. You know, as soon as this card gets flipped in draw phase, it's pretty much over. I definitely think this card has to go. There is, again, just very little counterplay to a card like this. It's like D-Shifter when they limited Gamma. It just made no sense if you didn't also hit D-Shifter. So these are cards that are gigantic issues in the format and have to go. The next one here is D-Barrier. I personally think that D-Barrier isn't really that crazy. And I know that people are just...
But it's the same problem as Eradicator, Epidemic Virus. It's also a lingering floodgate. Same issue as Shifter. So, yes, you do have to ban. Like, it's still being set on your opponent's turn and activated using, or set on the first turn by Labyrinth, and then flipped up the same way you're doing Eradicator, Epidemic Virus to lock people out. All of these cards are locking your opponent out of the game in some sort of way, and that, like, it just should not be a thing.
I think it's flipped against like Sorcerer or Branded, but like to me, I don't think this card is as crazy as cards like D-Shifter, E-Red, Puppet. I think there's other things that are a lot better, but that doesn't mean this card also should still be a thing. I think that there are certain cards where even if they're not a current problem, they still should be addressed. This is still similar to my thoughts on Harpy's Featherstorm. I don't have it on here, but I do think at some point that card has to get addressed because it's just going to be an issue again and again. So hopefully at some point that card also gets addressed, but I definitely don't think that it's going to be this format. Now the last one, I don't think this will happen, but I do think that it is a conversation that needs to get brought up when they're making the ban list, and that's Calamity. I think right now a lot of the combos are very copium with this card. I don't think they're very good, but I think that at some point there's going to be a very well thought out combo that goes ahead and just turbos out Calamity, and that's going to be a problem. So I think that...
I gotta say, I am fine with pretty much any sort of card that says on it, your opponent cannot activate or summon cards for this turn. I'm fine with just going in and banning it, even if it's not being used right this second. I absolutely agree he is right. Was it High King Calamity, whatever this card is? It's being summoned on your opponent's turn in a few different ways.
It didn't really do a whole lot, so that's why I'm like, maybe they won't do it now. But at the same time, this card is an issue, and it will be an issue at some point.
A lot of the Synchron decks can get it out.
This card going very quickly, just to kind of save the format before it's a problem. So as for cards that I could see getting limited, this is going to be quite the long list, but I think there's quite a few cards that we have to talk about, and I'm sure that a lot of you will agree on a few of these. The first one here is going to be Zenmighty. There's no reason this card's still on the ban list. Like, if you're worried about certain cards still in the deck, then hit other cards and bring back.
Well, I do think Zenmighty could come back as long as you hit Wind Up Hunter. You have to ban Hunter. But yeah, Zenmighty could come back. I think it could come back to 3. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think that at all. It'd be really cool, but Konami has just completely forgotten about that deck, or they don't want it to be good, it feels like.
I just think this card's fine. Even if you brought it back to 1, I don't think it's a problem. I think this card's been on the ban list for too long and won't do anything. Next card, Harp Horror. This is actually a very interesting one because I feel like this is one of those cards that actually would do something if it came off the ban list. I know that we talk about a lot of cards that just wouldn't do anything. I think this is one of the scarier cards because there's a lot that you can do with this, and I've talked about this in a few different videos about even doing things like tier Orcus with like the Horus cards, or you have other decks that can really utilize the Orcus engine very well. We've already seen a couple different decks utilize the Orcus engine even recently, which is really cool. I think it was a super heavy Orcus deck, and that was pretty neat. But this is one of those cards where I definitely could see it going to 1, but I don't know how effective this would be into the format, but I do think that it would be something that a lot of people would play. So the next one here is Prosperity. I think this card has to go to 1. This card has.
So I'm kind of indifferent on Harp Horror. It's a very strong card. It gives Orcus, well, it gives it back their whatever they need to potentially be good. They're certainly not going to be good without Harp Horror. But I don't think it's going to make a difference on the meta unless everything else is hit back significantly. As far as Pot of Prosperity goes, I don't know. It does make decks too consistent. I just think it should have been printed, really. At 1, it's going to feel a little bit sacky, but I guess the whole thing with Prosperity is it makes your deck consistent. So if you reduce the consistency of Pot of Prosperity, you reduce the problem of over-consistent decks using Pot of Prosperity. So I guess that would be probably a correct hit. Maybe.
Has to get dealt with. Like, it's so degenerate to just be like, hey, I'm gonna look at the top 6 cards in my deck for no reason. And this is one of those things where if you have a crazy board, and then the opponent just goes Prosperity, and you let it go through, like, you're gonna get hit with a Sphere Mode more than likely. I think the real time when this card was a super big problem,
Sphere Mode or Evenly or Lightning Storm or
Prosperity at the end of your combo and essentially like searched IO. And I can almost see that happening again with cards like Anti-Spell. And I do think that this is a huge problem that needs to get addressed. Prosperity being at 3 is just way too free. I think it's a card that definitely has to get limited. I know that this has been talked about for a long time, so definitely let me know what you have to think about it, but I could see this card going to 1 for sure. The next one's Hugin. I couldn't see them limiting Fountain, but I could see a limit on Hugin. Definitely something has to get done to the Runic engine. Like, something major has to happen. I think Hugin to 1 would be fine because it definitely cuts consistency hugely, because if you, like, negate the first Hugin, now they have to get Hugin back in the extra deck just to use it again.
That makes sense.
Fountain. Otherwise, you're playing like Thrust or Terraforming to get the Fountain. I think that this is definitely an interesting one to hit Hugin. I said this last time that they were going to hit the deck, they should hit Hugin. It'd be an interesting avenue. We'll have to see which one they choose.
I think limiting Runic Tip would be a fine hit. Limiting Hugin is... it's okay, but I don't know if it deserves that sort of hit. If you hit Hugin to 1 and then you negate Hugin, then that means that they literally can't search their field spell, which is their linchpin of the deck. I feel like that makes it a lot more... I know we want it to be a more fragile engine, but I think that overdoes it. I think hitting Tip to 1 and then potentially hitting a few of the other cards could be better, or a better option. Limiting the field spell to 1 instead, and only having... limiting the field spell, limiting Tip. Honestly, it would be probably how I would do it.
Next two here are going to be Fenrir and Unicorn. I do think that we will end up seeing the same hits as the OCG. They did limit both of these, and I don't think that's really incorrect at all.
That's
Some people want
fine.
to see Fenrir get banned. I think it's fine at 1.
I don't think Cashier Fenrir is fine at 1. I mean, Pankratops is at 1. I feel like Cashier Fenrir is just a better card with a whole deck that's better built around it. So why does it get to be at 1 if Pank is at 1? If Pankratops at 1 and it's a worse card, I mean, it's not a worse card, it's a different card. But again, like Cashier Fenrir can search, it can banish, it just does so much. I just think it's...
the deck like semi-playable. It's not playable at that point because it's just like really bad and really hurt. At the same time, like it could be a mini engine or whatever you want it to be, honestly. But I think 1 Fenrir is still fine. It'd still be like a cool attack in decks like Tier and what have you.
If they wanted the Cashier deck to continue to function and be able to be a deck in Yu-Gi-Oh, then they should have made it so broken that literally every card probably needs to be banned on. Like, honestly, they just shouldn't have done that. They shouldn't have.
They can use it to search things like Tier Cash. But both these cards probably will end up seeing some kind of a hit, and I think that you won't see either of them banned, but I do think you'll see both of them limited for sure. Sleepy Memory up next. This is one that I've actually talked to like several people in the community about what they could see with Pearly and if Pearly needed a hit, and the consensus was Sleepy, and I don't disagree with this. I do think that this is definitely the next one to go after. The deck is picking up a lot of steam. It's being played quite often, and we're seeing it.
I don't think... what has Purely done at this point? Like, they've gotten some tops here and there, but Purely was already hit like 3 weeks after it finally got its real support where it was playable. It already got heavily hit, was not playable this last couple of formats really, except as like a going second deck. Now we finally have the new Exceed. Are they really gonna hit that again in August, like less than a month after the release of their most recent set that gave them support? I hope not, honestly. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a strong deck, but I mean, if they're gonna let Cashier live for like a year or more, if they're fine with Tier running around still, it just seems like they're giving little just pats on the head to Kashtira and these other decks, and then they're just shooting purely in the knee. It just doesn't, like, I would not hit purely at this point.
Sleepy would definitely be an interesting one. So we'll have to wait and see, but I think this will end up being the card that gets it. A lot of free draw power, and then you put up a towers, so it's kind of insane. The next one here is Glow Up Bulb. I don't think it's a shock because we already have Revolution Synchron. And like almost Glow Up Bulb. I could see them giving us back Bulb just to see what it does. I think that Bulb is still objectively the better card, but I do.
It is.
Finally, I know that everyone was really anticipating it in the last list, and I do think this has ended up being the list that we'll see it.
They don't want to bring. They're not going to bring Glow Up Bulb back. I don't think so. I mean, they just released a card that's supposed to be Glow Up Bulb. They want you to use the new card. They're not going to bring back Glow Up Bulb, I wouldn't think. And honestly, while the other card is good, I do think Glow Up Bulb is still just the better card. Like, it does so much. It's just so free. The other one, I think, has a little bit more limitations on it.
Then the last one here is Magnemite. I think that we finally see the limit. I think we finally see the limit. This card is so...
Every Bestial needs to be at least limited. Honestly, it's just... They're DD Crows, but they summon a 2500 attack body that searches out other dragons, or sends a card from field to grave, or hates something, or searches you. Like, it does everything. And it's a DD Crow. And this is limiting decks the same way Kashtira is gatekeeping decks. This existing stops so many decks that could be very, very good from ever just even going to tournaments. Like, why would you when people can just side in essentially 12 DD Crows against your deck?
Free. It's so free. I think having 3 Rebellion is still fine, but having like the 1 Magnemite is also fine. Having 3 and being able to just like constantly recur is kind of insane. So this is something where it doesn't like kill any dragon strategy at all, but it definitely puts a dent into the game plan of just like hard opening up Magnemite like multiple times because, you know, it's at 3. But this would definitely be an interesting hit, and I could see it happening for sure. I don't really like semi-limits. I really don't. I think that they're really just not important to do. Unless your name is Malicious, because Malicious is the only card that ever deserved a 2 of. It's really funny, the amount of times that Malicious has moved on the ban list. But sitting at 2 of, it's definitely like the Malicious spot, right? The only card I could see going to 2 would be Infernity Archfiend. I could see this happening. We'll have to wait and see what they actually want to do with this, but I think that you can only move Archfiend or Launcher, one of the two, and I think that you'll probably end up starting with an Archfiend instead of Launcher, because the Launcher is broken.
I'm kind of indifferent to the semi-limit list. I think it's a lot. I do think there's a... Sorry, let me rephrase this. So many people say that it's not a good thing. Things should either be at 0 or 1 or 3. Like limited, unlimited, or banned. And that the semi-limit doesn't do anything. I disagree. I think there are plenty of cards that could be in that spot that aren't. And it could be a valuable tool to use, and it's just underutilized.
But we'll have to see which one they choose to do, but I can definitely see this one up next. As for cards going to 3, I have 3 of them here actually. The first one is going to be Gazelle.
Sure.
Why is this card still on the ban list? Like, please bring this card back. It's just insane.
Salamangreats can be full powered and it doesn't matter.
Especially with the new support, we probably will see it at 3. The next one here is Sekka's Light. This is a card that I've been calling for many formats.
Sekka's Light could be fully back to 3. I hate that they limited Sekka's Light. It made no sense. The card by itself is so limiting. It makes you run like only monsters. It was a really cool card that lets you build a certain deck. And it forced you to be smart with your deck building and have cool choices, and it was very cool. And they're like, no, we'll limit it, so there's no reason to actually do that. There's no reason to have a cool deck design.
That's another card. It's just like, why are you not back at 3? There's like,
I mean, you could put that one at 2 if you wanted to, if you're worried about it being too powerful.
One here is going to be Ancient Fairy Dragon.
Yeah, it got eroded.
I don't think that it's hurting the game by having it at multiple.
Ancient Fairy Dragon got eroded, so there's no point for it to be on the list at all.
Definitely let me know what everyone thinks down in the comments below as far as what you could see getting hit next ban list. Quite a few limits here, but